Welcome to Let's Talk Memoir, a podcast for memoir lovers, readers, and writers. I'm your host, Ronit Plank. Let's Talk Memoir is also a Substack newsletter. About once a month, I publish memoir craft advice, answer questions about memoir writing, and share my latest classes and upcoming events. You can go to substack.com and subscribe to Let's Talk Memoir for free. You can also find me, Ronit, on Instagram and on Blue Sky. Today, my guest is Jennifer Pastiloff, who trots the globe as a public speaker and hosts her retreats to Italy, as well as her one-of-a-kind workshops, which she has taught to thousands of people all over the world. The author of the popular Substack, also called Proof of Life, she teaches writing and creativity classes called Allow and workshops called Shame Loss when she isn't painting and selling her art. She has been featured on Good Morning America and Katie Couric and in New York Magazine, People, Shape, Health Magazine, and other media outlets for her authenticity and unique voice. She is deaf, reads lips, and mishears almost everything, but what she hears is usually funnier, at least she thinks so. The author of the national bestseller on being human, Pastiloff lives in Southern California with her son, Charlie Mel, and her very, very new, exciting book is called Proof of Life. And for those of you who are watching this recording as well as listening, here is her beautiful book. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you.
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you that you popped up in my feed so long ago, years and years ago, when I was a baby book marketer, a baby podcaster. And I thought, oh my gosh, and I followed you and I knew all the work you did. And then it's a dream to know that you're on my show on Let's Talk Memoir. So thank you for making the time. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. Well, my dear friend Sherry Sadati was like, you gotta go on. You gotta talk to Ronit. And, when Sherry talks, we listen. When Sherry writes a book, we read it.
Yes, we do. And she's been my guest on the show too. And she's just so lovely. And I attended one of Sherry's embodied type of memoir workshops as a guest. And the energy there was just so beautiful and calming. I'd not experienced that in a writing group before. But let's talk about you. Can you share a little bit about your new book, Proof of Life?
Sure. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm terrified, like poop your pants terrified. And
Wait. What are you terrified about? Can I ask you? I have all these questions.
oh
Let
my
me just
God, are
say,
you kidding?
I have all these questions. I'm holding up a paper. Everyone can hear it now. But I have a feeling we don't need the questions, except that, they're here just in case. But I know we're going to be talking about anything
Keep
and
them
everything.
in case. What am I not terrified about? Well, one, putting yourself out there, it's scary. It's like I will never, ever, ever, I will die before I read reviews on Amazon or Goodreads. But still, it's like here I am, and it's just, giving my heart to the world, and that's
But isn't
vulnerable
that
and
interesting
scary.
to me? I'm curious because you do that, in my view, and maybe this is incorrect. Please tell me what you think. In my view, you do that vulnerably all the time. That's how you show up in all your spaces. So I'm wondering what the difference is with a memoir, with this book.
Well, it's a big difference. It's a big difference because A, it's a book, right? And God willing, my lips to God, it gets in more hands, right? And there's a lot more in this. I am very, very clear that I don't owe anyone anything. I don't just because, and I find this phrase to be so gross, but like a public figure, we're all public figures, but just because I'm a quote unquote public figure, I don't owe, like when I first left my marriage, I finally did share, but I didn't like owe it to my followers to,
Mm.
I don't buy into any of that, but I won't hide in shame. So this isn't like a tell all, but I do really tell the truth and share really deeply painful things and hard things and joyful things. But there's that. So that's always sort of terrifying. I left my marriage and it's complicated as it always is, but we're not even divorced yet and we're cohabitating and there's that. And Anne Lamont, who blurbed my book, but she says like I'm bastardizing it, but like if you didn't want to be written about, behave better.
We love that. That's a very popular quote in these circles.
Right. And so I don't throw anyone under the bus. And yet, and still, I do my best to stick with just my story, my truth. There's no one truth. We know that too, I think by now. But still, Robert's in it, my ex, and there's other things. So that's always, yikes. And then on a real personal level, I am so proud of this book because ultimately I'm a poet, and that's what I thought I was going to do with my life and who I was going to be. And, I quote unquote accidentally dropped out of college with a year left and became a career waitress at the same Hollywood restaurant for 14 years. And I did not think I got to write poems. And, I don't have an MFA. I don't even have a college degree. And so the fact that there is a poem in each chapter, the fact that I did this book my way, and I stayed so true to my voice and my humor, it's scary and it's also exciting. So it's all the things. And then people are like, you just need to detach from the outcome. Oh, really? No shit. But also, how? So doing my best, but it's also, yes, and. So there's so much that feels exciting and nerve-wracking and all the things at once.
I mean, your book is coming out really shortly, and I'm going to be celebrating your launch with this episode. At least Let's Talk Memoir is going to be celebrating, and so will I. It's all coming up. And also, you had a book come out before, and I'm actually curious what the writing process was like for you for this book and on Being Human. What was similar? What was different, if you can recall?
Yeah, a lot different. One, on Being Human, I had been writing for so long and also talking a lot of smack. Like, I'm writing a book, but I wasn't until I finally was. But I had a lot of the writing and I kind of compiled it. It kind of was already written. It was all over the place and it was a lot of sort of putting the puzzle pieces together. This was a lot different and a lot harder. I was way, way more confident in myself. Part of it is I'm older, but in my voice, in I was gonna say my you-ness, but like your you-ness. No one else has that. Your magic. Whatever's invisible and you can't go here. Look what I have to show for myself. It's what makes you you. A lot more confident in that and a lot scarier because there was a lot more at stake, leaving my marriage, a change which I thought would kill me. I mean, I really believed it was a scientific fact that change would kill me. It didn't. But also, it's a different book. This one is labeled self-help, even though On Being Human I mean, it was inadvertently self-help, but this one is a lot more. There's exercises for the reader, which I call allow, like my tattoo. There are poems, and there's memoir-ish, there's stories, there's footnotes, it's a way different structure. And the process was a lot harder because I was in the middle of leaving my marriage and my life was in major upheaval where it wasn't before. When I think about the fact that that's when you said, if you recall, I'm like, actually, it feels like it's just here. What? I did this? How did I pull that off? But it was a lot different.
Was it hard to find the mental space at all? The mental space to write it because you live with your ex? Was it hard to find the emotional room at all?
Well, and we live together-ish. Every other week he leaves, the whole thing. It was hard, but it wasn't because of him. It wasn't because of him living there. It was because of me. It was because, and I say this in the book, there's a lot. There's a whole chapter on finding your way in. And I have a big thing with that. When I teach writing, I always look for ways, like in teaching poetry, let's say, I'll often offer up a poem and I'll give a line or an image and I'll say, start with that and find a way in. And you might not even keep that line, but finding the way in for anything is often, beginning is the hardest, right? There's so much self-worth stuff that came up. A thing I walked around with since I was 8 years old was the utter knowing that I was a bad person. I thought I killed my father, which I didn't, but I thought I did. And so there was a belief that started to rear its head as like, you don't get to do this. You don't. And so I kept unconsciously like not starting. And then I would become overwhelmed. So I get immobilized by overwhelm. So the more I didn't write, the more and then everything going on in my life. I had no income. I left my marriage. I mean, I was like in a panic attack constantly. So the mental space was very different. I started painting as medicine, even though I had no idea what I'm doing. And what I found was I painted my way into the book, which sounds nuts, but it's exactly what I did.
Well, that's interesting because you said just a bit ago, sometimes finding your way in is the hardest part. And so you found your way in with painting, it sounds like. And I love that you said that because I use prompts when I teach. I use a lot of prompts. And sometimes it can just be the most disarming sentence or the most unassuming sentence as your prompt, but it can become evocative for you as a writer. And all of a sudden you're open, or you're feeling like your
Exactly.
guard is down, maybe you're feeling more centered, and you can reach and figure out what it is you're trying to say. And I love that you have that other art form as well, and you sell paintings.
I do now. I mean, it's so cool, and I'm very proud of it because I don't know what I'm doing, and I say that in quotes because it's art, it's subjective, but like, I mean, I really can't draw. And what draws people all the time is the freedom in it. And it's really interesting because I believe Rick Rubin talks about it too. Hi, Rick Rubin, I love you. But it's like because I don't know what I'm doing, there are no parameters. It's not like this is wrong, this is bad, this is finished, this is not. And the freedom. So what I did was I kept trying to take that into my writing. It's the only time I had that sense of freedom. And so I'd be like, what if I took this into the rest of my life? This sort of like letting myself off the hook before I even begin with trying to be right or get it perfect or even be good.
Yeah. And, I pulled two quotes so far from Proof of Life that I want to talk about because I have a follow up question to them. So, the first small quote I pulled was, quote, I learned that contrary to my inner assholes, and inner asshole is in caps, faux wisdom, loving our own selves is not impractical or far fetched. Nor is it out of the realm of what is possible. You show yourself love by not putting aside your needs and wants, simple and not always easy. And then there's this other part that
Yeah.
you wrote, quote, we can't stop at the surface if we want to unearth or explore anything. How would we be able to grow or expand if we did? How can there ever be a shot at challenging our thoughts and beliefs, or the bullshit stories, also capped, we've held on to if we are not willing to look deeper? And I find both of these so important, especially for memoirists. I was in a yoga class a couple of weeks ago, and the teacher said, root to rise, which I've heard before. I love it because I feel like the deeper you're willing to go, the more you feel your roots and where you come from, and then maybe the origin or the genesis of something, the more patterns and resonance you can find in your book. But I'm curious. We don't often know where our excavating will take us when we're digging through our material and our memories.
Well, I would revise that, Roni. I say we don't ever know. I just recorded a podcast just now, and she talked about the chapter about leaving the land of fine. And that is why I stayed like in the land of denial. And like for me, on being human ends with the words now what? I didn't want to have to now what anything, so I didn't ask deeper questions. I stayed surface, like, this is fine. Fine's all I get because the not knowing was terrifying. And for me, change equaled death. Like my dad dropped that at 8, and I just equated. So I was like, if nothing ever changes, no one will suddenly die. I will be safe. We never know. And that's the beauty of it. That's the scary part, the exciting part. And hey, look, if you never want to know, fine, stay over there in the land of fine or the land of denial or the surface questions. But if you're interested, or if you want to create shift, or if you want to be who you say you are, or do what you really want, you're gonna have to.
Yeah, it takes courage, and it's completely, as you said, and you amended what I said, it's unknown. It's totally unknown. I also wrote about this, that if you knew where you were going to end up when you started your book, if you knew where you were going to end up, I mean, I personally wouldn't really be that interested in following the path. I wouldn't be that curious about writing my book. But not knowing is part of the joy of writing, especially a memoir.
Yeah, I mean, and not knowing, I don't do well with it. I don't know many people that do, but when I say change equal death, I cannot exaggerate it more. I would have stayed in any situation, even if I was miserable, as long as I didn't have to change. And so not knowing for me is like the devil. But man, that's life. That is life. And we're fooling ourselves if we ever think we do. And that's like, one of the ways I found to deal with my grief, and I was older at the time, my dad died when I was 8, was I became severely anorexic. And that was all about control. It's like, well, I can't control, it's so cliche, right? But I can't control anything out there. I can control this. And again, it's faux control. It's like you're kidding yourself. We never know. And that's also another reason, like, I'm like, do it before you run out of light, right? Wayne Dyer would say, don't die with your music still in you, because you don't know. And so this whole like putting it off or waiting or I will tomorrow or one day or staying in that, well, I don't know how, or no one gave me permission, all of that are just ways to stay stuck really when we're not really stuck.
Yes, yes, stuck is sort of it's a construct that maybe we have created ourselves without knowing it, or we believe we're stuck and we need to maybe
Well,
look in
same,
other
same though. Believe you're stuck or you are really stuck. Same thing. Same thing.
well,
What's the
because either
difference?
way, you're immobilized.
Exactly. I mean, like, it's like all the years I was like, whatever, like this prison, it's like, wait, the door isn't even locked. But, believe you're lost, believe you're stuck. It's same thing. It's that's why the inner asshole is so tricky. And we need to find ways, whatever works, as long as you're not intentionally hurting yourself or anyone else, that help you not believe lies, especially ones that you've had for so long that they don't even register as a lie, that they don't even register. They just feel like part of your DNA.
And I wanted to ask you what you would say to writers who are struggling to clear room in their lives to write about their experience. Maybe they worry that their story doesn't matter. We hear that sometimes with would-be memoirists, or they feel other people
Yeah.
may have, quote, had it worse. I mean, I definitely had that before I wrote my memoir. What do you say to people like that?
Okay, so everything with me has to have sense of humor, or I can't buy what I'm selling, or if there's no sense of humor, if it's like too precious. So one of the things I say to myself, and I invite you, meaning you, person who's saying these things, I go, get over yourself. Get over yourself, Jen. And I still struggle with this sometimes, which is one of the ways I quiet my asshole is like putting my phone away because I'll start scrolling and compare myself, like, oh, they got there first. Okay, what? That's not possible. First of all, no one is you. No one has your specific history, personality, voice, anything. And the other thing is like, oh, someone has it worse. All right, then, like, it's not a contest. Like, this isn't like a contest of like whose life was harder. So I find those to be excuses just to not get started. And even if we are really believing them, we have to talk ourselves out of them. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know. I just want to say, get over yourself. Step out of the way. Get out of your own way. Get out of your own way and find a way in. That's the editor. That's the inner asshole. All the voices. Like, who do you think you are? No one's going to care. Oh, really? You want to write about your dad dying when you're 8? Well, your friend lost 2 children. Or, all of those things. It's yes and. Yes, she did. And that's awful. And I'm writing my story. And all of the things with the inner asshole, have compassion. I hear you, and not today, Satan. But here's the deal, like, find a way to quiet that or not, because only you can write. Only you can, quote unquote, save yourself. Only you can be who you say you are. So find a way in. If you want to acknowledge that voice and go sit it, tell it to sit in the corner. But all of that are just instruments and distractions to have you not started, which is why I think finding a way in is the most important thing.
Would you read that section we talked about? There's this introduction, pretty much. It's on page 16. It's an introduction to what follows in your book. And I would just love for you to read that so people understand a little bit about what's in Proof of Life.
Okay. What follows are questions, prompts, stories, memories, poems, exercises, and what I call daily practices. They are daily-ish for me, so I rename them daily-ish practices. In the same vein as my yoga classes are yoga-ish, I am Jew-ish rather than Jewish, just like how I can be fearless-ish, but I'm not fearless. The verb allow is one of the most important words of my life, so each chapter contains sections called allow. These are designed as investigations for you to lovingly and hopefully playfully discover where you've been holding back or what you've been denying, and places for you to explore and to query, including what am I allowing in, what am I not, and am I willing? The idea of simply allowing may feel easier said than done, except it's not. You just have to get out of the way. How much of whatever you're not allowing is courtesy of your inner asshole or one of shame's minions? After that, ask yourself, now what? Then begin the allowing. It's all about the allowing.
Yes, and to that point, one of the prompts I pulled, there are a lot of prompts, lots of really interesting sentences to begin your writing with and interrogations for ourselves when we